Good evening. How is everybody?
Doing good.
Good. Good, good, good.
Hey, good.
All right, let's go ahead and get started on what we've got here. I'll fill in for there's Jesse. How are you, Jesse? Glad you can join us. No, there's Corey. Beth won't be with us. One, two, three, four, five. Beth won't be with us this evening. I don't know if Jennifer is coming or not. I hadn't heard from her, but I'll fill in for those who aren't here with us this evening. If anybody got a presentation that they'd like to do, let me share my screen and see where we are this evening. All right, so Siobhan, you've got case study one. Jessica, case study 11, Jesse 13, Corey 15. I'll do best. Jennifer doesn't come, I'll do hers, and then I've got 28. All right. And then we'll talk about where we are. We'll do some housekeeping things when we get done, but I always like to jump right in. Some folks like to go. So, Siobhan, you got anything you want to share with us tonight on case study one? Just as a reminder, case study one, let me get out. Case study one was uh, you got a candidate for a job opening, Eileen Duvall. All right, Siobhan, take it away. I'll stop my share. You want to share? If you got anything you want to share, if not, you're good.
Yes, I can share. Oh, hold on. Okay, let's see.
Let me turn off my camera. Sometimes that helps to share.
Okay, hold on. Look. Zoom. Okay, later. Sorry. Hopefully. Is that mine? Oh, here we are. Can y'all see that? Okay. I can't hear, but almost. Okay, so I had case study one. It's called A Different Applicant. So in a nutshell, we have a principal and a team that has a candidate to interview for they're seeking a person to teach at least 3 remedial mathematics classes as part of a load. Usually it is difficult to find teachers for these classes because the students who are assigned are generally not prepared and sometimes difficult to handle. Yeah, we all know about those students. So here's their one ad. They need a math teacher. And so they've posed it, in my view, they've posted it as just a math teacher position. However, so they have a qualified candidate. Here we go. Eileen Duvall. So she's an instructor at an educational program managed by the State Department of Prisons for Inmates. She's a formally trained school teacher and she's a well-qualified applicant. However, the principal, they already have this meeting, this interview set up, but the principal interviews her on his own before the team. So as I was reading in our book, the principal, he wasn't supposed to do that. So the problem was he should not have interviewed her without his team. And so he said something like, she came in, she's a little lady. She was well groomed and dressed professional, but she was no more than 4 feet tall and she walked haltingly. So I looked up haltingly. So he was saying that she didn't seem very confident in her walk when she came in. And so then that made me feel like, okay, well, he already probably feels a little biased now because he knows the kind of class that he has, and he probably has an idea of the kind of teacher that he needs for that class. But this lady is not showing him that she is the candidate. So I think like an assumption was made just based on her physical appearance. And then I don't think she's aware of the full scope of her job responsibilities, because working at the jail, what she wants to do is get away from the institutional life under which the prisoners must live. And so she thinks that, okay, by coming to the school system, like she's going to get away from that. Now, coming to a class that has like difficult kids does not equate to the school to prison pipeline at all. However, I don't think she realizes that this is the kind of situation that she is going to be walking into. And for me, if I was a principal and I was looking at teacher retention, I would feel that he would need to make it clear that like this is the position that he is hiring for. And so he should have interviewed with his whole team first of all. He should keep his assumptions about how he already feels about the candidate to himself whenever, he does interview with the team. There should be full disclosure of what the position entails, because this lady has already put her feelings out there about why she wants to, get away from jail. They already know that this is a very hard to staff and keep position. And so if you're looking at teacher retention, like you don't want to start out that way, because that's a big problem at the school that I just left. It's a hard school, but nobody is saying it when the candidates come, and now they're there. And then you have a turnover rate like we had this year when 27 of the 29 teachers left. And then I think the team should collectively decide whether or not to extend a job offer to the candidate based on her qualifications and whether or not would be a good fit for the school and the class. Now, I know we can't, with the crisis that we're in, with school teachers, we can't always have like the right person on the bus sitting in the right seat. However, with a class like this, like you're going to continue to go through teachers and go through people if you don't get somebody who is well prepared for that kind of class. And that's all I got.
All right. All right. I'm typing here.
Okay.
All right. So I've jotted down some notes here. So you can
Mhm.
stop your share. So let's talk about this one a while. This one's going to take a minute.
Okay.
There's legal and ethical issues. So I'm going to start with the legal issue. And Siobhan caught it immediately. He interviewed without his team. Remember when I talked about due process, that it's different? The functions of due process are the same in every district when you start talking about hiring. There's 11 things that you have to do. Imagine I've got two hands with 5 fingers and then one extra here. But who does those things is always the issue. You got to make sure you do all 11 of them. Now, the issue here is in the district where this person works, the team interview comes before the individual principal interview. It works that way everywhere. If you come to my interviewing section, hold on 1 second, let me stop. If you come to my interview section later this semester, I'm going to talk about the 4 types of assistant principal interviews. The first one is a cattle call interview. This is by due process law. First one is and that's where they separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, Jessica is in the role now, and she had to go through an interview process. The first one is some sort of a sorting, what I call the cattle call interview. It might be based on principal perceiver. It might be virtual. It might be a test just like you did in the app cell. They give you data. It could be a number of them, and I go through all of those. The second one is the group interview. The third one is the principal only interview. Now, they have to go in that order. It's the way they work. So the principal skipped the group interview and went straight to the principal interview. That's a problem. If this lady files a suit, the due process suit doesn't get the job, what are you going to do now, hero? You didn't follow the protocol. You were supposed to do the group interview with teachers and maybe a parent, secondary school, and with some lay people before the principal interview, which has to come after the group interview. So that's the first problem. And Siobhan caught that one right away. How do you remedy that? Can you pretend you didn't do that interview? No. You can't pretend that you didn't do it or it didn't count. It happened. And so I would make sure that I might disclose to the group that I've already done a pre-interview with this candidate, but I would not divulge, as Siobhan said, I would not divulge anything from it other than I did this interview and now we're going to go to the group. You don't compound one bad decision with another. Again. All right, now when the text that Siobhan pointed out, I interpret walked haltingly differently. And that might just be my own personal bias. I walk haltingly because of, surgeries and injuries. I've got a hitch in my get up now. I'm old. I need a new hip or two. And I don't consider myself to be disabled. But, everybody gets old. Everybody, if you did stupid things when you're young, like I did, and didn't take care of your body really well, you walk haltingly. But generally, that's a sign of a disability. Now, can you ask her if she's disabled? No, you can't ask her. So what? But what is the most appropriate assumption here is that she is disabled. All right. So now all of a sudden we get into EEOC law. So let's see what EEOC law says about hiring somebody. This is federal. Let me share my screen. I got this one prepped. This is the only really legal one we got. Now, second half, of course, they're all going to be legal ones, but this is really the only legal one that we got that touches on the legal part. Let me see if I can get this. All right, so the law says equal opportunity employment in North Carolina. North Carolina General Statute 126.16 covers applicant for state employment. This is school jobs, so that'd be applicant for state employment. State departments, agencies, university, local political subdivisions may not discriminate based on race, sex, age plus 40, color, national origin, religion, or disability, except where those things constitute a bona fide occupational qualification. Can we exempt people who are disabled from teaching positions? No, we can't. No, we can't. And so, although he might have noted that should not be a decision. Is height is that a disqualifier for teaching?
No.
No, it's not. So now, does he have to hire this lady? Does he have to recommend her for hire? No. But what he can't say is, I didn't recommend you or her to anybody based on, I think she's disabled. She's got a hitch in her get along. She's short, she's tiny, she's small, whatever. So if he has those misgivings, he better keep them to himself. You got to keep those to yourself. Now, I got caught in a similar situation where I told you I had 37 vacancies at the junior higher. I offered a lady a position over the phone. She was cleared. Now, remember, in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, it's different. They're already, when they come to you, they've already been approved. You just pick them if you want. I mean, they've already got a contract from the board. I mean, when they send you 3 applicants in Charlotte, all you got to do is say, I want that one. And then they come the next day. Now, let me remind you that I worked in districts where you had to do everything, and then after somebody else offered them the job and they had to go to the board. In Charlotte, you had an analyst, and when they came to you, they already had a contract. And so I got one of those. I talked to her on the phone, and she had kind of a hoarse and deep voice, and I thought, I had this mental image of what I was getting, and when she showed up, I thought she was a 7th grader. I told her to go to class with the rest of them in the junior high. I'm not kidding. She looked 12 years old. I wouldn't have guessed her a day over 12. And so all of a sudden I was like, I don't know, I was hiring her to teach high school math and then ninth grade algebra. And so what am I going to do here? So what I did is I did some switching around. And so the notion here, is it ethical to maybe switch around and have somebody else teach this group and give her somebody that might not tear the roof off the dump? I don't know. I did. That was the thing that I did. But then you get into, will that make somebody else mad? What's the ethics of that? Of, changing the master schedule where she's not teaching the remedial group, um, you know, teaching that group and teaching another group. So that's one of the things that we need to have a frank discussion about is when, we're going to learn about master scheduling in the second half, and we plug those teachers in based on their test scores and how well they do with certain groups of kids. And all of a sudden we get somebody, because their physical stature is not what we think it ought to be, we start changing the master schedule. Is that ethical for everybody else? We start changing those things. Is that pejorative? I mean, and to Siobhan's point, we know it's hard to get teachers. We got a qualified one here, highly qualified. Do we let her go? Do we not hire? Do we move her to another room in the building and take somebody else out of their class and give them this bunch? You know, what are your thoughts on that? Siobhan, lead us in that discussion.
I mean, I guess we could, because technically when you're hired, I mean, in Rowan County, when you're hired at a school, you're hired to be a K-5 teacher. You're not hired for a specific, you're not hired to, oh, I can just do first grade.
Yeah.
Or I can just do fifth grade. Like, you are a K-5 teacher. So I don't think it's anything, I mean, unethical about moving her. But
the rationale for scheduling is federal law, state law, local board policy, performance data, and then teacher input. That comes last. And so seems to me like, state law says you have to have highly qualified teachers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, doesn't that trump what teachers want to do, which is 5 teacher input? That comes 5. Federal law, state law, local board policy, performance data through EVOS, and then teacher input. So which is higher, state law or teacher input? State law is 2, teacher input's 5. So again, going back to how the law flows, not a problem to do that. But what about the ethical piece?
I mean, I guess that's where I'm hung up, because I'm just looking at, I mean, you get teachers in your building. Well, we were getting teachers in my old building, like, it seems to me like under false pretenses, and then they get there and it's not what they thought they signed up for, and then everybody's running out the door, and then what happens to our kids?
Yeah. I mean, if we move another teacher into this bunch that didn't sign up to teach this bunch, we might lose them. Right. And then this lady might not pan out, and so we end up down 2 teachers rather than 1.
Right.
That's the micro political or ethical consideration of this. Let's look at the ethical paradigm right quick. Let me share my screen. I mean, there's no easy answer to this one. Justice, fairness, equity, care, loyalty, trust, corrupted morals, power, critical theory, profession, accountability for academic success. I mean, it hits a lot of these different ethical paradigms. If we start saying, all right, this was our master schedule last week, but this week, this is our master schedule. I'm moving, Siobhan, you're not going to have that class of regular kids, that you do pretty well with. You're going to have these remedial kids now. Right. Do all teachers do equally as well with all groups of kids?
No, and a situation just happened like this at my old school. They have a lot of vacancies, and so they had a fourth grade teacher that went and filed a grievance on some people on her team. And so the principal decided, okay, well, I'll just move her from the fourth grade team to the third grade team. And then I'll move a teacher from third grade to fourth grade. And that third grade teacher was like, oh, no, you're not. So that teacher gave a notice, a 30-day notice to leave. And so now you're down a fourth grade teacher and a third grade teacher.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's perfect example.
Right.
Perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Everybody needs teachers, so they're going to go somewhere and have another job in 30 days, so they're not losing anything.
Yeah. But you are exactly right in that. I mean, you risk not. You got one vacancy now. Hiring this lady's going to be a risk because she's wants to get out of institutions, so you're not sure that she's going to stay. And then the one that you move into this, if you move them around. So I suspect your best bet is just to bite the bullet. If you hire this lady, is to go ahead and hire and put her in there with the booger eater. That's about the best you can do. I think you run the risk of losing too. Now, when we talk about institutions, it's kind of like marriage, as I always say about marriage. It's a wonderful institution if you feel the need to be institutionalized. I have been for the last 38 years. But understanding that the two closest institutions that we have, if we look at organizational structure, are schools and prisons. Mm-hmm. They are virtually the same. And so if she didn't like working in prison, I'm not sure she's going to like working in school.
Right.
Especially if she's got the remedial bunch, because that's the same as prison.
Yeah. I was going to say at the school I was at before, they did a thing where everybody in the English department had one section of freshmen. Yeah. So that there wasn't one teacher that had like all the freshmen. Yeah. And, because teachers do get comfortable with their little groups and stuff, especially if you're AP certified or things like that, you get comfortable kind of having those. And so where I was at before, every English teacher had at least one section of English 1 CP. So that everybody was, having all of them all the time, and no one was kind of not having to kind of the remedial freshman. And that helped, having everybody, forced or not, kind of in the same boat of dealing with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's been around forever. I mean, you learn that in high school, really, especially in high school. You learn that very quick. And we're going to circle back to that in just a second, Corey. That's a great point. I want to expand on that one. But to kind of finish Siobhan's point about this is performance data. Every teacher doesn't get the same results with every group of kids. Now you're going to take, a teacher that's been doing really well with these upper level kids over here. And you're going to stick her over here with the lower level kids. And as you can see, not everybody does well with every group of kids. And your original master schedule was based on the notion that you put somebody over here teaching these 4s and 5s because they did really well with right here on the bottom. But this one down here, that they're probably not going to do as well. So again, but as Corey said, one of the things that we try to do, and we've done forever. When I was a high school teacher forever and ever ago, it rotated by year who had to have the repeater biology, the idiot, the idiot biology class. That's as far as they had to go back then in science in order to graduate. They had to pass biology. And so, but that was that was the barrier that kept them. And so couldn't graduate from high school till you passed biology. Now you didn't have to take anything beyond biology, but you had to pass biology. And so we, if we just have one section of repeaters, we rotated, but sometimes we had to have more. But to Corey's point, that remediation group, you pass them around. Everybody, you don't give that can't be somebody's entire day. And so you make sure you try to do that, regardless of your performance data. You don't make somebody have to teach remedial all day long. And that's a great point. But again, we look at that performance data on who we sign. I mean, on this one, I think you hire this lady. My vote is I hire and put her in there, right? You know, 'cause I'm gonna create to Siobhan's point. I'm gonna create, you know, I'm gonna create a 30-day notice on the teacher I put in there. So I know I'm gonna lose that one too. So you know, I'm just gonna have to roll the dice. This lady can do it. But more than likely, I mean, if you had anybody else, would you hire her? Think if she's trying to get out of prison, she just trade one prison for another.
Mhm.
I don't see, I can't see any difference. I mean, teaching remedial kids in the regular high school is the same as teaching kids in prison. It's the same thing. You know, you probably don't have to go, and now you have to go through a gate and metal detector to get into regular school. I mean, I'm telling you, it's no different. Absolutely no different. You know, Gardner Webb just changed food service from Sodexo to Airmark, and you said, "Well, what's that got to do with the price of eggs in China?" Well, it's very simple. Airmarks, you know, they both provide provide cafeteria food. Airmark's the biggest provider for prisons in the country. Sodexo was the biggest provider for colleges, but they do both. It's the same food. Everything is the same. Now that we have security and fences around schools and windows that won't open and doors that you have to have IDs to get in and metal detectors and all that, schools and prisons are the same. I mean, you would not be able to tell a difference in teaching remedial at what is it called now? It was Vance High School and Gatlin right around the corner, which is the youth facility. It'd be exactly the same. We used to have, when I was in CMS, we would have the teachers teach half a day over at the high school and then go over to Gatlin and teach a half a day. It's exactly the same thing. So she's not changing vocation. She just thinks she is. So I'm not sure she's going to stay. So I'll be back to one vacancy. But if I move a teacher there, she's probably, you know, the new one's probably not going to stay. The old one that got moved is not going to stay. Now I'm going to have two vacancies. That's just the reality of school administration, folks. Sometimes you just have to make the best worst decision. What was it? My wife's watching a mini series. I heard him say this was, you know, this was the least awful of the awful ideas. And so that's where that was. The ethical piece is we should not do this to another teacher.
Mhm.
How much will people trust us if we do something like this to them? What's the first tenet of leadership? Followership. If people don't trust you, it's not going to go well. EEOC, we should not have jumped the gun. If we did, we don't need to mention anything about it. We need to go back and do our group interview. Was not smart to interview without the team principal. You know, made that error. That is a legal error that he shouldn't have made. And then after that, you know, but the issue for me is you put her in there, you hire, you put her in there. You got to have somebody.
Do you tell her tell her that's what the job is for at the interview?
Absolutely. Now that's one of the things that I used to be accused of all the time in Charlotte. Is people would say, "Are you trying to not get them to come to work here?" Absolutely. What do you mean? You know, no crying in baseball, no crying in school. You know, I need for you to understand what you're signing up for when you come here. Don't come complaining. I hired. They sent me it now. Understanding in Charlotte again. You don't hire your EC people. You don't hire your custodians. You don't hire your cafeteria. They do it all for you. But they sent me a new EC teacher right out of college. She's 22 years old. She worked 2 weeks. She worked 2 weeks and came in and quit. Just gave me her keys. Didn't work a notice or anything. Said, "This is not for me." I said, "Why not?" Now I said it was a new the EC teacher. They hired her from the central office and sent her in. 2 weeks. She, you know, second Friday of school that fall, she brought me her keys. And I said, she said, "This is not for me." I said, what seems to be the problem? You hadn't come by. You hadn't told me. I've been down in your room. I said, "These kids are too low." I said, "You do understand you're teaching exceptional children. The reason they're in there is because they're low." And so sometimes people don't really know what they're getting into. And so it's inherent when you do the principal interview, not the group interview. When you do the principal interview, that you tell people, "Look, this is the deal. This is who we got. This is what It's not going to be easy. These kids, we got this community. You tell them the truth. And she may decide that this is not for her. And the first thing you tell her is it's going to be no different than teaching over to prison. You're going to teach exactly the same kids. They're just not over there yet. They've done probably plenty of stuff to be over there, just haven't got caught yet. But they're not a bright group, and so they will eventually get caught. But this is the same job. You just drive into a different location every day. This is the same job. You need to understand that. If she doesn't want to come, then she doesn't want to come. But yes, it is the ethical thing to do. That's the ethic of profession, that you explain to people what they're getting themselves into. Absolutely. You do not want conscripts. You don't want people who don't want to be there. You want people who are going to sign on for the work. One of the things that used to amaze me about when we would get, what do we call them? Teacher, what are those teachers that you get, the young ones just out of college, through that program? Why am I having such a senior moment here? Not troops or teachers, it was the other one, the domestic peace corps, where the teachers come in.
Teach for America?
Teach for America. Thank you. Thank you. It was amazing to me that half of them were good and half of them didn't even stay the first month. They'd be gone in a week. Some of them would come in and they would be so young and green, and they were ready to put their shoulder to the plow and and get after it. And others wouldn't get after it. But what I loved about the ones that stayed is they didn't have any training, but they embraced the challenge. They had no idea, but they embraced it anyway. Now, you get a lot of beginning teachers, they know what the challenge is and that, but I'm talking about, it's amazing to me that it's about 50-50. No clue what they're getting into, and half of them will embrace the challenge. The other half, no, this is not for me. And so, but it's, what you need is those people who every day who come to your building who embrace the challenge. I'm not saying they're going to have a great day every day, but they leave work every day whistling. But can't be any crying. I mean, you can't just come and whine and complain all day every day.
Right.
I mean, the whole notion is if you tell people what the deal is, and then you get after it. Jessica, I don't want to pick on you, but working in Robinson County is not easy. Got a lot of D&F schools, and that's not Dale's opinion. That's a report card. They've been through a lot of turmoil over the last few years, but I'm betting that you've got some dedicated teachers at your building.
We do. They're sold out for their community.
Yeah, I mean, I'm betting that there ain't many places in the state have as many tough jobs as in Robinson County, but they still got some dedicated people that get after it every day. But see, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for people who are not afraid of the fight. That may be the most important thing, is they don't run at the first sign of blood. And so, our takeaways on this one, it's inherent upon us to make sure that whoever we hire knows what they're getting themselves into. I've had people, I'd say, well, why'd you come here? And well, it was the closest place to my house. Did you look at our report card? Did you look at our teacher working condition survey? Did you look at anything? Well, y'all win a lot of ball games. Yeah. But, it takes till about 9:30 to get the blood up out of the hallway every morning after the morning fights, after breakfast. You do understand that this is a slaughterhouse. That in the 90s in Charlotte, when they decided that they were going to have magnet schools, you had what was known as midpoint schools. Well, what does midpoint schools mean? Well, it means everybody that can't read and write has to go to school somewhere. They can't go to the magnets. So they make midpoint schools, and they bus them in from all over the region. 47 bus loads and 2 parking lots full of cars every day, of basically kids that can't read and write, that can't do well enough to go to one of the magnet schools. You have to have some place for them too. Now, you know, the only time we ever really won was at the ball game. Now we had some people that could play, but but the notion here is this is not an easy bunch, and they're not like puppies, and they never lay down and roll over and let you tickle their bellies. You have to whip them every day. But teachers need to know that. Seriously, I had to come say this was the closest place to my house. Not a reason to come. It's inherent upon you to make sure that when you do that third level interview, that principal interview, this is what we have to offer you. And if I tell you up front, you can't come to my office every day and complain about these kids. They're our kids. And the mama sent us the best ones they had. They didn't keep any of the best ones at home. The mama sent us the best ones they had. It's our job to do something with it. I mean, it goes back to public schools are provided for in the preamble to the constitutions that states may provide public education. We had private schools before we had a country here, folks. Harvard's older than the country. Public schools are for the great unwashed. They're people's ticket out, bootstrap, a way to a better life. We're not always going to have the best kids. And that's what you got to find teachers that understand that it's going to be difficult. Don't be pejorative in the way she looks or whatever. If you think that she might not fit in, you need to make sure that she understands what she's getting herself into. But don't make don't double down on being stupid and move somebody else into that position. That's not the appropriate thing to do. The beauty of what I did when I made my move, when I talked about the lady who came in when I moved her down to the 7th instead of putting her in the 9th, is that was a very coveted job in the 9th grade. Teaching 9th grade algebra was a very coveted job there. And so that made that person happy. So I had a double winner there. I had a little issue on the certification, but we were able to work that out. But yeah, that made the teacher that got the algebra class, which were our best students, that made that person happy. Not in a case like this where that would be the maddest person in town, probably going to kill your car or let the air out of your tires later that day. And I've had both to happen. I suspected it was the faculty more than the kids. That's it. So Siobhan, thank you for presenting that one tonight. Let's move on to our next one. Let me share my screen so I can see where we are. All right, I can close that one now. So Jessica, you've got case study 11. So let's look at that one. This one's about bad teacher behavior. And Jessica's an AP. She knows this never happens. This is completely hypothetical.
I just dealt with this week.
Yeah, you will every week as long as you're in the business.
Yes. Here we go. Okay, so this is Miss Davis is a bad teacher, and principal at an elementary school that's pre-K 5 received some mail from a parent complaining about their child's 3rd grade teacher. And their complaints were basically that the teacher was withholding recess from the class as like a whole class punishment. She said that there was verbal abuse. The teacher would call them stupid and dumb and things like that. She used raised tones with the children. The parent was able to go in and sit in the class before, and she noted that the teacher yelled at the children to get their attention and to get them to sit down. And her request to the principal is that her child be moved to another classroom. So my thoughts were, one, I was just kind of curious as a side note, how long that teacher had been teaching. Is this a first year teacher type thing, or is this a veteran teacher, or somewhere in the middle? I would definitely address the law concerning recess with the teacher and what we are allowed to do and not to do as far as taking recess away from students. And I would address also, I think, a conversation about a whole class punishment when it's not warranted is important here, to let them know that that only builds up resentment among your children who actually are doing what you've asked them to do. Anyways, I would have that conversation with the teacher. I would also be more diligent about monitoring this classroom to see the interactions that are taking place. I think it'd be important to also go over code of conduct and code of ethics expectations in the classroom with the teacher as well, and address relationship building and how important that is between students and teachers. I would do those things with the teacher. As far as the parent is concerned, we always advocate for that to not be the first thing that we do, is remove a student from a classroom and put them in a new teacher's classroom unless there's something really severe. And so we kind of handle that case by case. So I would address with the parent that I would need to conference with the teacher and put some things in place that way first before I remove their child from the classroom. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but
Okay, so you're saying you're not going to remove the child,
I would not, that would not be the first thing I did.
but
No,
I'm asking you what you're doing today. Are you removing the kid or not?
I'm not removing the kid today.
Not removing. Siobhan, are you moving the kid today?
No.
Corey? You're moving
Sure.
the kid today?
I'll be contrarian and I'll say yes.
All right. Jesse,
50-50 chance.
you removing that kid today?
No,
No,
I would not.
would not. All right. I wouldn't either. But Corey's the smartest one of the group. He really is, you know.
Corey's just trying to eat spaghetti.
Yeah. Corey's going to solve his problem today. But now the problem is tomorrow he's going to be the dumbest guy in town, because what's that mama going to do as soon as she gets away from school? She's going to call and text and social
Tell everyone else.
everybody she knows. And so there's going to be a line. There's going to be a line out the back tomorrow wanting to move from this class to that class. Boy, you better
That's
not.
what my case study talks about when we get to it.
Right. I'm telling you, y'all have to be talking about my old school like this. All of these scenarios like
Oh yeah,
happened.
exactly. And then it just gets it. So now, the issue that Jessica talked about, the legal standard when you go to court is arbitrary and capricious. And we're going to talk about that in depth when we get to the second half. Arbitrary is you punish one or not the other, or you punish many rather than the one. So it violates the standards of arbitrary. For example, if me and Corey are out back behind the gym smoking, and Jessica catches us, she's doing her, you know, she's out dragging the line, supervising. She catches me and Corey out behind the gym smoking. While smoking is pretty bad for you, and so she catches us both. She sends Corey back to class, and she pulls out her gun and just shoots me. Just graveyard dead, bang, right there. Now, while smoking's bad, it's probably not. That's a little bit capricious. That's arbitrary. One, that she let him go and punish me, but capricious is, I don't believe it says in the code of conduct you can shoot me over smoking. That's a little much. And we'll talk about code of conduct and arbitrary and capricious. Well, the issue here is you can't do group punishments because they're both arbitrary and capricious. They violate both standards. Group punishments do. When you go to court, that's why your handbook will say, don't do that. You know, I went to the doctor. When I went to the doctor and said, "Doc, it hurts when I do this," what did he say? Quit doing that. I mean, that's the notion. No group punishment. That's it's arbitrary and it's capricious. Can't do group punishment. All right, her language toward the kids. Does that violate North Carolina's public school bullying law?
Yes.
Oh yeah, in a big way. In a big way. So, Jessica, I'm going to give you the opportunity to rethink what you're going to do with this teacher. You just going to conference her, or are you going to put her on an action plan?
Oh no, I would have to put her on an action plan. I would. And that would be part of my monitoring.
You'd have to. She's violated the standard of arbitrary and capricious, and she's broke North Carolina bullying law. She has committed an actual a violation of the law. You have to put her on an action plan to correct her behavior for that. You have to, or we'd have to let you go. So we'll look most specifically at the bullying law when we get to that one next semester. We're going to talk about that one. You have to have a bullying plan in place. You have to follow that. Cyberbullying is probably the biggest problem in school right now. It's cyberbullying. We'll talk about that one and what that law is. And contrary to popular opinion, Weasley principles that just lie. Cyberbullying law was not repealed. The only thing was one part of it was amended, the part where if me and Siobhan are in a Twitter battle and she's winning, I can't claim she's bullying me because I entered into a Twitter battle. That's the only part that was changed. All the rest of the cyberbullying statutes are still there. But I can't tell you the number of principals that say, well, we didn't look into that because we don't know if it happened at school or not. Doesn't matter. We don't know if they used a school device. Doesn't matter. Where it happened, when it happened. If it comes to your school, you have to deal with it. Parent comes in, reports it, you call a law and they have to start because they got powers of subpoena. We'll go through all that. Trust me, you'll get tired of hearing me talk about that one second half. But this teacher has violated North Carolina's bullying statute. She has to go on an action plan, by the way. She's also violated the standards of arbitrary and capricious, which is expressly forbidden as local policy. It's not state law, it's local policy, but when you go to court, you'll get wore out over that. So the state of North Carolina, through the General Assembly and the state school board, says these are the things that are acceptable and not acceptable in public schools. Department of Public Instruction, North and South Carolina, generates a handbook that says can't have these things. Now, they don't tell you what the punishment is. The local school board has to adopt a code of conduct that says you can't do this. If you do, these are the consequences. You can't be arbitrary in terms of enforcement of that code of conduct, and you can't be capricious. You can't give more than the handbook allows. But teachers may not do group punishment. That violates the standards of arbitrary and capricious. You'll lose a court case. You can't bully because North Carolina law says you can't. So yes, we'll have to put this teacher on now. Moving the kid, if you move the kid, it's going to be the floodgates open. It's going to be awful. It's going to be absolutely awful. It would be smart today, but tomorrow it would not be, and every day after that. So, but Corey's right. Today, it would be smart move today, but in the long run, it'll come back and get you. So that's the idea on that one. All right, let's look at
a quick question.
Yes.
With new parent right laws that have just been passed, can a parent lean into those laws to force a principal to move their child to a new class?
If their child has been singled out in their behavior, or if it's something that is against their religion or their belief system. On this one, I don't think they could, but there'll be a test case of just, on one like this. Having read the law, this does not fall within the parameters, but we'll see. But you're right. This parents' rights bill, basically it's over, selection of materials, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, we can't get enough teachers as it is now, much less that only hire Republicans, because that's basically what the law is. We only want Republicans hired. I mean, if you want teachers, majority of them are going to be Democrats. That's just the way it works. And the idea of woke and all those kinds of things, woke's just another way for being, having good manners, but they don't believe that. And so that it's mostly a political notion. In a case like this, it really doesn't cover it, but it might in the end. You never know until it goes to court. But this is more about ideology. This is about that. But this is elections have consequences. When you get a super majority, either party, they tend to they tend to abuse their power, and that's what they're doing. We only want what we want, and we want to burn the other folks' house down. We don't want to moderate or communicate or conflict manage or in any way compromise. We only want our way. And so that's really what it's about. Is if somebody said something like slavery was bad, and they don't like that. It was just unpaid internships. Isn't that what they said? I mean, seriously. I mean, that's theater of the absurd. This is, Monty Python now, flying circus. We've lost all sense of reality here. I don't know who they think we're going to get to teach school if we don't, if we start doing these political litmus tests, we won't have anybody teach school. And so, but I think that's, in many ways, that's kind of part of the plan. All right, so our newest class member, Jessie, who's joined us tonight. Let me see here. Jessie has, and we'll help her with this one. Jessie has case number 13. And that's about budget cuts and staffing plan. And it also goes back to what we were just talking about. That's why I went ahead and mentioned that. So again, we have all these people who want to turn back the time back to the basics. Again, I suspect I'm the only person on the screen who was alive in the 1950s, and I was. I don't remember it being an ice cream social or a picnic back in the 50s, especially if you were a person of color or if you were poor. Very discriminatory time back before civil rights. And it, a lot more religious persecution back in those times. Ku Klux Klan hated Catholics as well as Black people. Not really, I'm not sure what time when we talk about going back to Make America Great Again, going back to a time like that. I don't know when that time was. One of my favorite short clips that I've seen lately was by a comedian named Lynn Koplitz. And she was doing a skit. She was dressed in a dress like Lucy would have worn back in the 50s. And she was doing her comedy routine and said, yeah, she'd like to return back to a time where all you had to do was, didn't have to work and you were at home and the man did everything, and said all you had to do was fix 3 meals a day and try to avoid a beating. I thought, yeah, that's, it's hyperbole, it's satire, but, life wasn't too good back in them days for women, people of color, and and religious minorities. That wasn't too good a time. But we have this political movement now, where this notion of an idealized Leave It to Beaver, Mayberry kind of America that never really existed, and we have all these folks these ideologues who want to go back to that. Not a good look, by the way. I never thought we'd go, I've seen a lot in my lifetime. I never thought that we'd go backwards this hard. But we have. And so, all of a sudden we want to get rid of some of our programs, the pre-vocational, the fine arts, we've got back to basics, that kind of thing. And so this one is fairly simple. Every year, you get your allotment from your federal programs. The federal programs, again, are Title I, EC 504, Exceptional Children, and AIG, and Career and Technical Education. So the pre-vocational stuff, that's all federal. You don't have anything to do with that already. You don't hire those teachers. You don't. I mean, they're federally paid. Those positions come to you. State allotted positions, regular core basic education teachers like English and math, they come to you in an allotment as well. You just get your allotment sheet and you make your master schedule based on your allotment sheet. This is not really, all that other stuff's just in there to confuse you. When the superintendent says, what's your plan? What he's talking about is feed your master schedule into Power School and it'll come out as a school activity report, SAR. And you can't put people in there that you don't have positions, classes you don't have positions for. And you don't, in no way as a principal do you determine what your allotments are. This is the programs you have. This is the teachers that you have, and you make your master schedule based on that, and off you go. They give you enough that you have, barely enough to cover the state maximums, and off you go. Now, my story is I became a high school principal in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and when they had, somebody from the central office within a day of you getting there will call and say, "Hey, let's have lunch. I want to come by, or let's have lunch." And what they're bringing is what I call the book. What is the book? All the illegal stuff that's going on at your school that you have to fix today. Understanding in school administration, you're only new till lunchtime the first day. After that, it's your problem. You're either part of the problem or you get to be new till lunchtime the first day. That's why when they say, "I'm gonna come have lunch," first day you're there, the new is, the new is gone. And they come and tell you all the stuff that's illegally that's happening in your building that you have to fix later that day. It doesn't matter that it's been going on for years. And so when I became high school principal and the person came out and said, "All right," said, "you've got a really good photography program going on here." I said, "Well, that's wonderful. Everybody in the community loves it. The teacher, he's an institution. They do the pictures, they do the annual, they do the program for the football game. So it's just a wonderful program." And I said, "Well, I'm glad to hear that." And then she said, "You have to stop it today." "What do you mean I have to stop it today?" She said, 6 years ago, the federal government stopped funding photography in career and technical education 6 years ago. I said, "Well, then how do we have it? Does the fellow, he volunteer to come over here?" And she said, "No. The former principal, the reason why you're here now, took one of his English positions and was paying the photography teacher as an English teacher. You can't cross those two funding streams. Federal is separate from state. Like, you can't cross them. You can't put them together." Well, he was using a 10th grade English position to teach photography. They never gave it up. What was the problem? What was happening to the class sizes in 10th grade English? They all violated state maximum laws. So this has to stop today. Well, it made everybody mad, including him, but I kind of like that. Again, wrestling with a pig, you just get dirty and the pig just likes it. So I didn't really mind. But that absolutely happened to me the first day that I was principal at that school. Was I had to stop the most popular program at the school because the federal government no longer funded it. I said, "Why did y'all let him do this so long?" "Well, we don't want to talk about that." And so this is not really an issue. You will get your allotment sheet. These are your teachers that are federally paid. These are your teachers that are locally paid. I mean, that are state paid. Now, if you're in a high wealth district, you might get some. You might get some local teachers. But again, if you get local teachers that are paid out of the local budget, A, you have to be a high wealth district. And B, if you get them, they're already predetermined when you get them for a purpose. Again, you don't get to decide what you do with them. Everybody you get is predetermined for a slot, whether it's a federal teacher, a state teacher, or a local teacher. Principals do not have discretion to move them around. That does not happen. The only caveat to that is in elementary school, you might get one that you could move to, but again, according to your data, you have to move them where your data is weakest if you get them in elementary school. You don't really get any, you don't really have any say so as to what teachers teach. That's not you. You just take your allotment sheet, build your master schedule with it. Anybody have any questions on that one? That one's pretty simple. That one's not really an issue. Let me look right. All right. Corey, you've got case number 15 about class and teacher assignment.
Yeah, this one's basically what we've already talked about, where
Yeah.
you're the new principal of an elementary school and you're kind of doing, like you said, I think it's the third day of school. So the PTO president until the third day of school, and kind of
She was
message
at the
them.
beach, or she'd have been there waiting on you.
Message to say that their daughter is in a class that they would prefer them to be, that they're with a level 1 teacher, and the PTO president would prefer for their daughter to be with a level 3 quote unquote master teacher, and that the previous principal, who'd been there for a million years, would have already handled this situation, and that it needed to be, your predecessor had indicated that this would be done already. Could you arrange for Janie to be placed with Dr. Norris, please? Thank you very much. So yeah, we've kind of already talked about this, where, I mean, if you make the change, then obviously then you're dumb the next day, because then it's, tell a person, tell a parent, tell whatever, and then it circles around. And so
everybody, and Dr. Norris will have 73 kids in his room next week.
Right. And so I think the idea is you tell, you letter back or email back basically saying that, even though Miss Burkett, I think is the name, is a level 1 teacher, they're going to be partnered with this. We're going to keep her in there, because we know that your daughter is so awesome and smart and great, that she will be beneficial to Miss Burkett's class and that kind of stuff, and maybe try to sell it that way. But you can't move her, because like you said before, and like we were talking about before, once you do, then you've got 37 other requests to switch teachers or do whatever. So
yeah, 73 in there tomorrow. We got double the class size. Is there a problem with talking about this teacher being a level 1 teacher? Should anybody know what somebody's evaluation status is? Isn't that a federal violation of privacy laws?
it would be nice to know where that information came
Exactly. And so you can't use that as part of your discussion. But no, part of the problem with that parent shouldn't know that. But one of the things we have to make sure that we do is we want parents to be involved, but only in certain things. They don't need to be involved in personnel. They don't need to know all the inside. Now that's the reason a lot of them want to do it, because they want to be in the know. They want to be able to push buttons and make things happen. And my advice is the same as it was to a second grade teacher I had 32 or 4 years ago when I had her. Never trust a parent ever. Never, ever, never, ever trust a parent. If you do, they'll show you your still beating heart after they rip it out of your chest. Do not trust a parent ever. Number 1 job, number 1 rule: never trust a parent ever. No exception, no caveats, no buts, if, ands. Never trust a parent, and that should guide your behavior with them. They're not your friends. We're going to do TD Jakes our last Sunday. Comrades, colleagues, confidants. They can never be your confidant. They can never be your colleague. They're always your comrades. That means their enemy is your enemy, but that doesn't mean that you are partners with them. You have to understand that. People say, Dale, boy, that's an awful pessimistic way. We want partnership with these parents. Problem is the partnership they want is 99 their way and 1% your way. That's just the nature of the beast. You have to understand that. You have to keep them at arm's length always. But Corey's right, can't do this. But understand, they will show you your still beating heart after they rip it out of your chest. Don't ever trust a parent.
And sometimes keeping them at arm's length can be an issue if you grew up in the area or graduated from the school and stuff. A lot of times people think, well, that's the best person for the job, is someone that graduated from the school and is from the area. But that can open up a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah.
If it feels like principal by committee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what you have to tell people is today's my day to be in charge. I'll let you know when it's your day. you know, because it can't be that way, because I'm the only one that they pay to do this, and I'm the only one accountable for this. And so you got to understand that. They pay you to make a good number go up or a bad number go down, period. If you can't, they get somebody else. We're not doing this for the good of the group. This is your profession. You got to understand. So, as we used to say in football, you better gird your loins. The battle is joined. Parents are not your colleagues. They are not your confidants. Okay, our next one was best student 17, late to work. All right, you got a teacher that's coming late to work, but he's a great teacher. What are you going to do now, hero? And so, the other teachers are complaining because he's doing his roses in the morning. Let's see. He's had first period planning, and so he comes in late every morning because of his roses, and he does that. So what are we going to do with about this? Now the other teachers are complaining. They want first period planning, or they want last period so they can leave early, or they want planning during lunch so they get both shifts and the one in the middle so that they can have longer and leave campus and go Walmart, or go, as we say in this part of the world, go to the Walmart. Everybody wants to go to the Walmart as if it were an institution. I guess it is. What are we going to do? We're gonna move Mike, or we're gonna let him keep first period planning. We're gonna tell him he has to come to work on time. What are we gonna do?
We shouldn't move him.
Tell him he's got to go to work on time.
Pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
How about an action plan?
This one doesn't seem. This one doesn't seem inordinately hard to me. Mike, you got to come to work on time. If you don't, Mike let you go. I don't care how good you are. You got to come to work on time.
Right.
Bell ring, go to class. Bell ring, go to next class. One of the questions that you'll be asked generally early on, in that first level interview for administration, definitely by the third one, is are you an on-time person? That's one of the standard questions from the old Gallup interview. Are you an on-time person? Is that important in the school business? You doggone right. Buses run at a certain time. We have lunch at a certain time. We have class. Everything works on the time clock. When the bell sounds, you need to be here. This is not hard.
Right.
This one is not hard. Mike's got to come. Now, you tell Mike he's got to come, what are you going to do if you figure out Mike ain't coming? You got to assign Mike a duty with you. I had a football coach, and he didn't win enough games to have any ego or arrogance about him, but he had it anyway. And so he wanted to show up late for school, and so I assigned him to car rider duty out front with me at the high school every morning. I'm there. We're there at 6:30. Either you there or you're not. If you're not there, I'm gonna know. That's the kind of thing you have to do. And I told him, first time you late, I'm gonna write you up. Second time, I'm gonna move for your dismissal, or I'm gonna take your football coaching away from you. But you're gonna come to work on time. That's he was sorry as well to call him a teacher would have been a stretch. He wasn't much of a football coach either, but you are going to come to work. We're going to work on what you do. That's the second half of this is you're going to get better at what you do, or you're going to get gone. In both the football coaching and the teaching, but the minimum is you got to show up on time. And so I put him and his team on a diet after the first year. They ate themselves. God, they were just and that they won some ball games, and he thought he was the one that. If your kids had been in shape, we could have won plenty of ball games. If your kids had been in shape, and somehow he had finagled his way to teach European AP history, and he'd never had a kid to make a 3 on the exam out of 5. Never had a kid to pass, ever. European has the highest pass rate of any of the academic areas. I think art's on the one that has a higher pass rate overall. So I went down to see what was going on. He's teaching the Catholic Church back in the 1100s. They didn't even start till 1315. The curriculum did. He never taught them not one day that was on the test. Kind of like the U.S. history teacher that taught the Civil War all year. There was exactly 2 questions on the U.S. history exam on the Civil War. That's all he taught all year was the Civil War. I helped them find other places to work. But, the first part is you got to show up on time. I can help you if you'll show up. But if you don't show up, you got to go. I had a high school principal friend of mine. He was a little behind me in his career. I was at the central office and he became a high school principal. And his baseball coach said, "I'm gonna quit if I don't get last period planning. I want last period." He called me, he'll just have to quit. That planning doesn't fit the schedule that you have. You can't change the entire master schedule for North Mecklenburg High School with 3,000 kids so that he can have planning at a time that a math teacher or whatever he was doesn't have planning. Can't do that. But he says he's going to quit. Well, then wish him well in his next endeavor. That's all you can do. And so, folks, there's some basics in the business. It's not about being hard or Ivan the Terrible or any of that. You got to come to work. And you have to make that's part of it. That's why they hire you. Make people sure that people show up on time and don't misspend state money. All right, looking at our next one here. You can do it. Okay, our next one is I got Beth. Next one is I've got case 2 and case 28. Case 2 is Halloween celebration. This one's really easy as well. What's your thought on this one? They're going to have Halloween and that's a pagan holiday. Probably them Pentecostals. All been out of shape about that. The crowd that handles snakes and then worried about a Halloween costume. So what about celebrations like that? Are we supposed to have those during school anyway? Jessica, in your district, do they allow parties during the day?
Only at a specific time.
Yep. And we always offer an alternative. And we always offer an alternative for kids that can't eat ice cream, that are lactose intolerant or got a peanut allergy. Sometimes we got more in the alternative than we do because kids are so tender now. We got more in the alternative than the ice cream party where they had nuts on their Sunday. And so, can you have just a general Halloween celebration in the classroom? No, you're not supposed to be doing that. And if you offer it, it's at a certain time and only for kids that opt into it. It can't be where everybody has it in the room. Again, that's one of those really simple ones. That this one's not a problem either. This one is a really, really simple one. And then our last one is, oh gosh, and this is the reason I took this one. This one may take some time.
I got a question.
Yes.
So I get the kind of Halloween thing, but like my high school, we have homecoming Friday, and so we've got Spirit Week.
Yep.
So there's a lot of like interesting attires and stuff that, we have a dress code, but then we also have Spirit Week where it doesn't seem to apply depending on certain days. And I've always wondered about like the legalities of that, not just with but also just kind of what days we can have and what days we can't.
I don't like the craziness during Spirit Week, Pajama Day, and all that other stuff. I think that's idiocy. But
we didn't have a pajama day this week. We had a pajama day last year. We didn't this year because people complained and said that too many people were wearing just camisoles and things like that were not school appropriate. And so we didn't have a pajama day this year because of that.
And so no, you need to have some common sense about it. North and South Carolina law mirror one another. And so let me pull that up right quick and I'll show you exactly what that's covered under, Corey. That's a great question. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. Uh, 115C 288C. See that? That's part of the duties and responsibilities under powers and duties of the principal 115C 288. 115C is all the education ones in North Carolina. There's 545. 288's powers and duties of the principal. C is to improve instruction and community spirit. That's where those Spirit Week things come in, where you can have those crazy things during the week. But see, the problem is I don't think it ought to be interpreted that way, but it is. That's the whole thing. It was supposed to, in the initial intent was to have like community barbecues, you know, pep rallies outside of school and those things. But that's how they're bending the law there, Court. I no fun league. I put the quietus on a lot of that stuff when I was in charge. We stopped doing some of that. But the crazy dress and all those things, if those were my high school principals, we would be having a serious come to Jesus meeting, what we now call a critical conversation. About the liability of those kinds of things. But principals claim that it's under that community spirit. That's why they call it Spirit Week. How that's got anything to do with spirit, I don't know. But that's the whole notion. All right, so the last one is they're passing around a study guide where they're trying to help kids. Let's kind of read through this one. This one's a little more complicated than some of the others. So let me share my screen. I can do away with that. Okay. That's, yep. Test travesty. No child left behind. A lot of pressure on tests. So they're doing review sheets. The answer is George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. The question about it, the answer will be Susan B. Anthony, Martin Luther King. 3 more pages, dates and definitions spelled out. All right. Now you are all curriculum people. That means you're much smarter than the average bear, especially school administrators. So y'all are smart. So y'all know that all curriculum is content and process. Content, let's say, is math. Process is how to take the math test. So test scores are a function of skill and luck. Skill having 2 parts, content and process. Knowing math and how to take the math test. That's content and process. Knowing math is content, process is how to take the test. That's half of the test score. The other half is simply luck. And so what catches us on the luck part, and also if we simply focus on the process of how to take the test, is we get caught in regression to the mean. I'm sure in your stat class in 736, when they taught you the quantitative half, they taught you about regression to the mean. That scores that are artificially inflated by having kids practice test taking will eventually they will regress back down to the mean. If you want kids to do better and sustain them, you have to teach them more math, not just how to take the math test. So that's the problem with the study guide, is doing that kind of thing. Is all that is working on process. That can't be sustained. Now, there's nothing illegal or wrong about it. It's just a fool's errand to get caught up in that. Here's an idea: teach better, more content during the year. If you want kids to learn more, you got to teach them more. That's kind of basic to our business. What that tells me is that we're not doing a very effective job teaching all along, and then we're relying on trying to get them to guess better But that's the luck part. We're, again, the process here, we're trying to get them to guess better. And that means that our instructional program has got problems. As you folks would know, as being curriculum instruction specialists, if we're relying on test prep and those little practice tests and all that kind of stuff, we got issues. That means that we do not have a quality instructional program. And so if we're dependent on luck and process rather than content, knowing more math, we're in trouble. Thoughts on that one? I'm going to go around the room. I want everybody, you folks are the experts. And I know you understand regression to the mean. You understand luck and skill. Skill has two parts, content and process. I know you understand all those concepts from your C&I program. Your thoughts on this case? What would you say? And my question is, what would you say to those teachers? What would you say to your facilitators, to your coaches? What would you say to them? Siobhan, I'll start with you.
I don't know what I would say just yet.
Okay. Jessica, what would you say to your teachers and your facilitators, your instructional support people?
So that's kind of the battle that PSRC is in right now. For years, we've not had a common curriculum.
Yeah.
Not had, everybody's just been doing their own thing. So we've had study guides, we've had teaching directly to the test, we've had, that whole gamut of things that we know about. And that's one of the root causes for our scores being the way that they are and the deficits that we have in our county. So our county made the decision, we're going with a solid curriculum in both reading and in math. And we're starting at K8 right now. So they implemented it last year, and this right here is the conversation that we've been battling with our teachers since then, since the beginning of that last year, to get them to understand until there's consistency, until there is actual teaching the rigor of the standard and teaching it properly. We cannot move out of or grow out of the state that we're in now, because we can't say that we were offering high quality teaching in every classroom, because every classroom was doing what they wanted to do, regardless of what was taking place.
Right. Yeah.
So we're battling this, and it's real, and it's hard conversations with teachers.
Yeah, because if you're doing this, you're admitting as a teacher that you just happen to get lucky at test time.
Exactly.
You're acknowledging that you don't have any rigor, that you're not actually doing much instruction at all. You just, you're just hoping. Hope's not a plan. That's exactly. And so that I think that's the way that you approach this with teachers is folks, you're admitting that you're not teaching, that you're dependent upon luck, that you're not scaffolding kids. You're not using high yield strategies. You're dependent upon manipulating how to take the test. You're depending on luck. Can they guess better? I mean, that goes back to, didn't we talk earlier about why we can't count retest on the end of year test? The kids that are within 5 points of passing proficiency, 70, from 65 to 69, we let them take the test the next day. Now, we know that there's been no time for teaching or reteaching or remediation. They take the test on Tuesday. If they within 65 to 69, we let them take it again on Wednesday. What are we dependent upon? What are we hoping happens now?
That they pass.
Yeah, but that hope is based on what? That
blind luck.
We hope they
Just
get
look.
one more question right. than they
Right.
did before.
Just look. We're hoping they're better guessers today than they were yesterday.
Right.
Now, why can't we count those retests in our overall passing rate for proficiency? Doggone it. We tested 100 kids. And 50 of them passed. And then we had 10 that were within 5 points. We retested them. So we only had 50% of our kids at the proficiency. Ooh, we're right on low performing, aren't we? But if we got to count, but when we retest those 10, five of them passed this time. Why can't we count those 5 and be 55% and get off that low performing, right on the low performance doorstep? We got a little breathing room now. Why can't we count that 5%? Because we didn't take the 10 that scored barely above passing and give them the chance to be unlucky. We gave the 10 that were close the chance to be lucky. That's how regression to the mean works. But we didn't give the 10 who just barely passed the chance to be unlucky. Now, if we retested that 20, the ones that were lucky and the one, we'd come out with 20, we'd come out 10 passing and 10 not passing again. It wouldn't be the same 10 though. That's the way probability works, and that's the way regression to the mean works. You ought to Google regression to the mean if you're not into that. But it talks about that luck. You know, basically what we're when we do that, when we work on process rather than content, we're hoping we're basing our entire instructional program on luck. Can they be better guessers? And the reason why we can't count retests is because we didn't give the 10 that just barely passed the chance to be unlucky on a retest. And so the critical conversation that you've got to have with teachers is hope is not a plan. We can't base our instructional strategies on luck. It's got to be follow the curriculum. It's got to be best teaching practices. It's got to be all the things that you know better than me that you got to be doing, scaffolding kids, taking them where they working, growing them, doing those things. It has to be that way. Corey, you have anything you want to add to that you would talk to the teacher about?
It's an interesting thing because obviously, like, I teach English too, which is an EOC course, and there's always that push and pull between, you know, teaching over or going over stuff. You know, you want them to have the experience of it. You want them to not come into it blind. So you do the practice stuff and things like that, but you obviously don't want to kind of teach to the test. I think the main thing is teaching the skills, right? That's what they always say. So it's
content. That is correct.
If you teach them to find main idea, then they can do it in your class and they should be able to transfer it to the test. And so it's more about looking at, okay, because like in my English too, you know, we have a list of like, based on the standards, based on EOCs that we're not supposed to look at, what are like the 10 to 20 like skills that we know they're going to be questions
that
on.
You scaffold. Exactly right. Scaffolding is of skills, which are transferable to anything. That's the whole notion of transferable skills, is that you scaffold the skills. That's exactly right, Corey. That scaffolding is of transferable skills.
Right.
Again,
and it's like, I tell my kids, I should be able to pick the most boring, ridiculous article about bird migration or something that you care absolutely nothing about, and you should be able to still answer these 5 questions on it.
What's the main idea? Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist?
Yeah.
You should be able to do those things. That's exactly right. That's that scaffolding of skills. We start with the lowest one and we build our skill set on that scaffold. But we scaffold skills, not just memorizing things like, you know, who was the civil rights leader. That's not scaffolding. That's just memorization. That's just helping them guess better. But you're exactly right. We teach the content, which is, you know, the skills. That's exactly right. Jesse, you have anything? You're going to wrap us up tonight here. Jesse, you have anything you'd like to add in this area? the conversation you'd have with teachers that are just hoping that they're, for their kids to get lucky?
Well, I think I just want to echo to really have to have effective teachers teaching. I mean, whether they came with the starting point being effective or not, right? Growing to be effective teachers in the classroom, helping students to be engaging and taking ownership of learning so that they are acquiring those skills. It's so important, whether we're talking about materials like written curriculum or technical support from technology programs, or whether we have fundings to do more programs or less programs. I think it's just really the mind processing, learning, in the learner's brain or head or whatever, or the heart, all those five senses of learning at the same time so that every moment is a learning moment. I mean, like transferring skills are really echo to that. They can transfer any language skills, whether Chinese or whether Spanish or whether English, into picking up something in the classroom to help another classmate, even using that syntax, perhaps that you have taught and applying to a functional linguistic point of view, using that same skill to their life scenario that they're facing every day in their lives experiences. And then they go one day. I mean, my hope and my prayer and my heart is always like, they go home, they use those skills and demonstrate at home, being proud of what they have learned today, and they're eager to come next day and ready to understand this is a school that they must take ownership of learning.
Yes.
If not, learning is not happening in the classroom. So I just want to echo, all that good stuff that you already mentioned, but I just thought, it's just a challenge to any teacher or any principal or any school. I think that kids nowadays, they just come in and they're ready to be entertained. They're ready to just, passively watching or doing something without thinking through what's going on. But teachers, I kept telling them, we are purposeful in all the moments that we want to engineer in your classroom, but how much percentage that they are taking into heart, and then that may show in some of the test scores, that may not show exactly, because the whole person is not just the test scores. But of course, again, I buy into test scores. They have to show, increases going all the subjects, not just one English program. We may try to, adopt or launch one English program, but I really see the whole picture of all the subjects has to be moved together with all the numbers going up, because this is what they are doing as a person.
Yes.
All right. Well, hopefully, any topics, whether interesting or not interesting to them, they understand what learning is. It's lifelong. I mean, what profession they're going to be, noble in all the professions, but they need to take their life and fly with what we have given to them as teachers at their foundational years.
And so to conclude,
that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Jesse. To conclude on this one, and to for in my opinion and in my experience, for kids to take ownership in their learning, teachers have to take ownership in the kids and the outcomes. They have to buy into the notion, I am responsible. We can't blame the parents. We can't blame genetics or who they sent us or any of those, until teachers buy in that they're responsible to grow these kids, for these kids to learn, to transfer these skills, not just have them memorize stuff. Until teachers do that, kids won't do that. That's been my experience. I appreciate you joining me tonight. So I will see y'all in Charlotte. Not this weekend, but next weekend, October the 7th. I will see you in Charlotte. We meet at 9 o'clock on Saturday. I will bring a few pastries and coffee and water. You can't drink the water there. And we'll order lunch. So I'll send you the lunch order. Lunch will be on me from Jason's Deli. I'll send you the Qualtrics survey that I do for lunch. So Saturday, I'll spring for lunch. We'll be done no later than 4. And then Sunday, we'll get our biscuit order. We do biscuit breakfast on Sunday morning. I do devotional, and we don't do lunch because I let you go at 1 o'clock on Sunday. So, got to get you back home. You got to go to work on Monday. So again, I'll do pastries for breakfast. We'll order lunch on me from Jason's on Saturday. I'll let you go at 4. Sunday, we'll get our biscuit order, and we'll get Bojangles biscuits for Sunday morning. We'll have our devotional, but we'll be out by 1, and you can do lunch on your own after that. Okay. So everybody's got their assignment for their chapters, and try to have something visual for us at that one. But we're going to spend the day on Saturday. We're going to do Maxwell, which will conclude, and then I'll start with content on Sunday. So I always like to do that, because half a day of me doing content is all you can stand. All right, so that will be that. So I will see y'all in 10 days in Charlotte. So everybody have a good time until then. Thank you.
Quick question. Sorry.
Yes.
So is our presentation just going to be on the Maxwell chapter, or also the chapters from the principal?
No, just the Maxwell.
Okay.
Just the Maxwell. Now this when we get there, this concludes the principal chapters tonight. Y'all will just do your Maxwell ones. We're going to spend a day on Maxwell. That's a crash course in leadership. Instead of doing a whole semester course, we're going to do 1 day on leadership. And so it'll be a good day. We'll have a good time. We'll have some laughs, if nothing else. All right, it's a good question, Corey. All right, I will see y'all for Maxwell Saturday in 10 days. Bye-bye.
Bye.